If truth exists, if reality has an ultimate foundation, if life has purpose, then another question quietly emerges. How can human beings ever know it? For thousands of years, humanity has searched for answers. We have built civilizations, written libraries, created philosophies, developed mathematics, explored the stars, split the atom, decoded the human genome. Yet the deepest questions remain. Why do we exist? What is consciousness? What is good? What is evil? Why is there something rather than nothing? What happens after death? Human reason has achieved extraordinary things. It has allowed us to understand gravity, electricity, the movement of planets, the origins of stars, and the structure of life itself. Reason is one of humanity's greatest gifts. Without it, science would not exist. Technology would not exist. Civilizations could not flourish. But every tool has limits. A microscope can reveal bacteria, but not justice. A telescope can reveal galaxies, but not purpose. A calculator can solve equations, but not meaning. In the same way, reason may explain many things, without explaining everything. Throughout history, great philosophers recognized this limitation. Some believed reason alone could uncover ultimate reality. Others argued that reason eventually reaches a boundary, a place where questions continue, but certainty fades. Imagine standing on the shore of a vast ocean. You can see the waves. You can measure the tides. You can study the water. But the horizon stretches beyond your sight. Does the horizon mean nothing exists beyond it? Or does it simply mark the limit of your vision? Human knowledge may be similar. Every generation pushes the horizon farther. Yet every answer seems to uncover even deeper questions. The more we learn about the universe, the more mysterious it becomes. Modern physics reveals realities that defy ordinary intuition. Time behaves differently under gravity. Space itself can bend. Particles exist in ways that challenge common sense. Reality appears stranger, not simpler, the deeper we investigate. If the physical universe alone contains such mysteries, what about questions beyond the physical world? Can human reason, powerful as it is, fully comprehend infinite reality? Many thinkers concluded, perhaps not. This is where the idea of revelation enters history. Across civilizations, people claimed that ultimate truth was not discovered, but revealed. Not invented, but given. Not created by humanity, but communicated to humanity. These claims deserve careful examination. Because if revelation is real, it changes everything. It means ultimate reality has spoken. But another challenge immediately appears. Many religions claim revelation. Many sacred books exist. Many prophets have appeared throughout history. They cannot all be correct in every detail. So how can anyone know which claim, if any, is true? Blind belief is not enough. Blind rejection is not enough either. Truth deserves investigation. Just as a scientist examines evidence, a seeker of truth examines claims. Not with arrogance, not with fear, but with honesty. History, consistency, logic, moral depth, preservation, prophecy, transformation. These become questions worth exploring. Perhaps faith, at its highest level, is not belief without evidence. Perhaps it is trust, built upon evidence, reason, and sincere reflection. The search for truth has never been about winning arguments. It has always been about discovering reality. Because reality does not change. Simply because we ignore it. If there is a creator, then knowing the creator becomes life's greatest discovery. If there is no creator, then humanity should be courageous enough to follow the evidence wherever it leads. Either way, truth matters. More than comfort. More than tradition. More than popularity. The greatest mistake is not arriving at the wrong answer. The greatest mistake is refusing to ask the question. Perhaps every human heart already senses this. That quiet desire to know. To understand. To find what is ultimately real. Maybe that longing itself is the beginning of the journey. But if revelation truly exists, then another question naturally follows. Has God ever spoken to humanity? If so, how would we recognize his message? And among the many voices throughout history, which one, if any, is truly from God? That is where our journey continues. Writing. Has God ever spoken to humanity? If there is a creator, and if that creator desires to be known, then one question becomes unavoidable. Has God ever spoken to humanity? Across every civilization, people have claimed the answer is yes. Prophets appeared. Messengers came. Sacred books were preserved. Entire nations changed because of their words. But how can anyone know whether these claims are true? After all, history is filled with false teachers, false prophets, and people who sincerely believed things that were not true. So if God truly speaks, there must be a way to recognize his message. Imagine receiving a letter with no sender's name. Anyone could have written it. But if the letter contains knowledge no ordinary person could know, if its message remains internally consistent, if it transforms millions of lives across centuries, and if its authenticity can be verified, then it deserves careful investigation. The same principle applies to any claim of divine revelation. It should not be accepted simply because it is ancient, nor rejected simply because it is religious. It should be examined carefully, honestly, without fear. Throughout history, people have looked for certain signs. Does the message contradict itself? Does it agree with reason? Or demand blind irrationality? Has it been faithfully preserved? Or repeatedly altered? Did the messenger seek wealth, power, or personal glory? Or did they endure hardship, rejection, and sacrifice for what they proclaimed? History reminds us that truth is often costly. Many of history's greatest reformers were mocked before they were respected. Some were imprisoned. Some were exiled. Some were killed. Popularity has never been a reliable test of truth. Neither has persecution. The real question is simpler. What is the evidence? Can a message stand up to careful examination? Can it answer the deepest questions of existence? Can it explain why we are here? What is right and wrong? Why suffering exists? And what lies beyond death? These are not small questions. They shape civilizations. They influence laws. They determine how people treat one another. They even affect how individuals face suffering, loss, and death itself. If God has truly spoken, his message would not merely satisfy curiosity. It would transform lives. It would call people toward justice, toward mercy, toward truth, toward humility, toward responsibility. Throughout history, billions of people have believed they encountered such a message. Some found hope. Some found purpose. Some found peace even in the darkest moments. Of course, personal experience alone cannot prove something is true. People from many different beliefs report powerful experiences. Feelings matter. But feelings are not enough. Truth requires more than emotion. It requires evidence, reflection, and sincere seeking. Perhaps that is why the search for God has never ended. Every generation asks the same questions. Every generation examines the same claims. Every generation must decide. Not what is easiest to believe, but what is most likely to be true. Because if there really is a message from the Creator, then ignoring it would be the greatest loss imaginable. And if no such message exists, then humanity should be honest enough to admit it. Either way, the search deserves our best thinking. Not blind faith. Not blind skepticism. But an open mind, guided by reason, humility, and a sincere desire for truth. The journey does not end here. Because once we ask whether God has spoken, another question immediately follows. Among all the sacred books in history, which one, if any, has truly been preserved from the moment it was revealed? That question may change everything. And it is there that our journey continues. A natural next episode is to compare the idea of preservation of sacred texts in a respectful, evidence-focused way without making unsupported claims or disparaging other beliefs. Writing. Can we trust ancient scriptures? If God has spoken, and if his message was meant for all humanity, then another question naturally follows. How would that message survive the passage of time? Words are fragile. Books can be burned. Languages change. Empires rise and fall. Libraries disappear. Entire civilizations vanish. History has shown that human knowledge can be lost. Countless ancient writings, once treasured by millions, have disappeared forever. So if a message from God truly exists, its preservation becomes an important question. Can we know whether what people read today is the same message that was first delivered? This is not merely a religious question. It is a historical one. Scholars study ancient manuscripts, compare copies, analyze languages, and examine the historical record. They ask difficult questions. When was the text written? Who preserved it? How many early copies still exist? Were changes introduced over time? Can those changes be identified? These are questions of evidence, not emotion. Across history, different religious traditions have offered different answers. Some believe their scriptures have been preserved with extraordinary care. Others acknowledge that copying by hand over centuries introduced variations. Historians continue to study these questions using archaeology, linguistics, and manuscript analysis. The search is ongoing, because truth does not fear investigation. If a text is authentic, careful examination should strengthen confidence, not weaken it. Imagine discovering an ancient map. Before trusting it, you would ask, who drew it? When was it made? Has it been altered? Can its details be verified? Sacred texts deserve the same careful attention. Not because they are ordinary books, but because they make extraordinary claims. They speak about God, about humanity, about morality, about life after death, about the destiny of every person. Claims of that magnitude deserve serious study. But preservation alone is not enough. Even a perfectly preserved book could still be mistaken. So another question remains. Does its message reflect wisdom, justice, and truth? Does it offer a coherent understanding of reality? Does it inspire compassion, integrity, and responsibility? Can its teachings stand the test of time? These questions cannot be answered in a single conversation. They require patience, study, reflection, and intellectual honesty. The search for truth has never been about defending our assumptions. It has always been about following the evidence, wherever it leads. Because if there truly is a message from the Creator, then understanding it could be the most important discovery of our lives. And if such a message exists, one final question becomes impossible to ignore. Who was the last messenger? Was there a final revelation, meant not for one nation, but for all of humanity? That is where our journey continues. This leads naturally into the next episode, Who was the last messenger? Examining the evidence. If God has spoken, and if his message was preserved, then one final question naturally arises. Who delivered that message? Throughout history, many men claimed to speak in the name of God. Some sought power. Some sought wealth. Some gathered followers, only to disappear into history. But a few changed the course of civilization. Their words crossed borders. Their teachings shaped nations. Their influence continued long after their deaths. How can we distinguish a true messenger from a false one? History cannot look into a person's heart, but it can examine evidence. What did they teach? How did they live? Did they remain consistent, even when they suffered? Did they seek personal gain, or accept sacrifice? Did their message elevate humanity, or merely serve themselves? These are questions worth asking. Different religious traditions offer different answers. Judaism recognizes prophets sent to the children of Israel. Christianity centers on Jesus and understands him in ways that differ from Judaism and Islam. Islam teaches that God sent prophets throughout history to different peoples, and that the Prophet Muhammad was the final messenger, bringing a universal message for humanity. These claims cannot all be identical, so they deserve careful study. Not through slogans, not through assumptions, but through history, reason, and sincere reflection. Consider this. If there truly were a final messenger, what might we expect? A message intended for all people, not only one tribe. A teaching that calls people toward justice, mercy, truth, and accountability. A life that can be examined, not hidden in legend alone. A message that inspires millions, across languages, cultures, and centuries. Whether any historical figure fulfills those expectations is a question each person must investigate honestly. No one can make that decision for another. Truth cannot be forced. It must be sought. Perhaps that is why so many of history's greatest thinkers encouraged people to ask difficult questions, to examine evidence, and to remain humble enough to change their minds when the evidence leads elsewhere. The search for ultimate truth is not about winning debates. It is about discovering reality. Because if God has truly guided humanity, then understanding that guidance may be the most important journey of all. And if we are willing to continue asking, to continue learning, and to continue seeking, then perhaps we are closer to the answer than we realize. Our journey does not end here, because one question still remains. If there is a final message from God, what does it ask of us today? That question is where our journey continues.